everybody. This is Digging into the Future, and this is our 4th edition. And today we will be discussing GEAB number 153. My name is Véronique Swinkels, and I'm here with Chief Editor of the GEAB,
Marie-Hélène Caillol.
Very nice title this month. It was Racing for International Leadership, Beware of Disillusions. So we will dig into these disillusions. I'm sure that that will be the main subject of this episode. But before we go into this GEAB, just a question. The GEAB is always about anticipation, looking for the future. So just tell the audience, why is it so important that we research the future?
Very good question, Véronique. Thank you. Indeed, it is relevant to regularly remind why we do this exercice de style. It's an exercise, of course, digging into the future. You narrate, you tell stories that you are never sure, but you are trying to make sense out of what's happening today in a way that will help you understand where the world is going. What I see as the most relevant aspect, especially these days when it's so frightening, the future in general, the future which is not explored, is fantasized. And fantasy is made of fear and hope. And when you have a crisis like this, it's more fear than hope. And fear, as we say in French, is a bad advisor. And so it is important to, even if it's the GEABs, to some can appear as we announce bad news very often. Not only that, first of all, our readers know that we look very as objectively as possible to the future. So we also look at, of course, what is being built, what are reasons for hope. But of course, there's also a lot of warnings about risks coming, etc. But we think, we are certain that it's better to look at these risks coldly, look at them, understand them, and become capable of addressing them than imagining them. And so the GEAB is all about rationalizing the future. It's all about saying that we all have an idea of the future, and the less rational it is, the more passion, the more fragmenting for society it is, because everyone can imagine whatever he wants in his little corner with a group of other people who think like him, and you have groups like this all over the place who imagine a future either that they fear or that they hope, and it's very divisive. So if you want to rebuild what we need today, which is to rebuild social coherence, it is important to rationalize the future, to look together at what really is happening as much as possible, as like we do, anchored in facts like we do, and therefore bring back gather a common debate again, create the conditions for a common rational debate on the future.
Yeah. No, I think that's a really important aspect of the GEAB. It's about democratizing also the future. And if I look at this GEAB again, it's built on 122 references, so it's really well researched with very main sources of authority. So it's for those who haven't really looked into these references, always on the bottom page, it's really interesting to see where the information comes from.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. This GEAB is very much also at the heart of my passion, Europe, and how to build a strong, resilient, especially in these times, Europe. One of the things which struck me as interesting is that somewhere it's written in the GEAB, freeing ourselves from earthly matters, degrowth, depollution, depopulation. In a way, technology will help us to make a world that looks almost dematerialized and virtual. That was also the topic of the of last GEAB. So I think in 2021 shows us that it's not alone about dematerialization and virtualization. The challenges and the risk are really very real, very material as well. Eh?
Yeah, yes, that's true.
So, what is how do you see the trends, the evolving in the coming month? What colors are we going to see?
This is something we've been beating around the bush, turning around in the past few months, let's say even a year or so, even a little bit more than that. We suddenly became more and more aware that this vision that we had, this collective vision of the future that we had, which was very much about dematerialization, degrowth, depopulation, as you said, and which was the only way to address, to respond to the crisis of environment, of wealth, also on a global scale, knowing that we had these emerging continents coming into our Western-centered economic model, and so it seemed, of course, completely unsustainable. It is maybe completely unsustainable, but it is to be wondered, and it is certainly to be wondered whether it's sustainable or not is one question, but another question is how global society will actually manage to move towards these a bit dreamy horizons of a dematerialized future. And we tend to observe very carefully what is really at play there. Are we really heading towards that? Of course, last year there was a feeling that yes, that was it. We were heading towards this digital society. We were going to move less, to consume kerosene in the planes, etc. less. But today, in 2021, there is also this vision clearly of the fact that material economy is just shifting away from the Western world. It's going towards Asia, towards these emerging economies, and they consume material like hell. I mean, it's not, they are doing exactly what we've done, but due to the fact that there is less, it's moving away from us. And so it's accompanied by this ideology, I would say, which is to say, okay, we can deal without material goods, and in fact we are probably going to bump on the fact, and we are beginning to bump on the fact that it's not true, that you can go for a dematerialized, you can dematerialize some things. For instance, we are pretty sure that leisure society is going to be dematerialized, but it seems to be in favor of a huge consumption. We have a huge consumption going on today. We are consuming like hell these days. We are buying things on Amazon like crazy, clothes that we don't try on, so that we are going to throw in the bin right after. So that's the reality that we are bumping on today, and that tells a lot about a systemic trend, which is this, what we've also called in the past, this back to reality, this going back to reality. We see also we were going to get rid of oil. No, oil is all over. Oil is all over. We've discovered new reserves in Eastern Mediterranean, etc. You've got new exchange market, the bourse in the Emirates that have just started to fluidify oil flows. But oil is part of our future, of course. Except that there's less for more people. There's not less, but there's more. There's a hugely more bigger economy to nurture with oil, and that's calls for indeed diversification. But the diversification is not going to go along a decrease of oil consumption, for instance. So these are the remarks that we have, and we build a vision of the future based on this awareness of the realities that we can't escape yet.
Yeah. And I think for example, one of the things that was mentioned as well, that if you look at Europe and all the needs we will have for semiconductors in the coming years, and the fact that we have no industry ourselves anymore to actually fulfill these needs. So we're completely dependent on what's happening on the other sides of a more hostile economic relationships we have the other side of the world. So what are the underlying trends that you see that actually brings us to this moment?
We're on the semiconductors, which indeed shows how dependent we are on a globalized production system, which we can't reinvent. Indeed, we thought, okay, that's the COVID, we need to recenter our economies on ourselves, which is underway probably, but we need for that a lot of money, and we need a lot of time. And we need also the skills that have gone away from Europe in particular. I would say we tend to think more and more that maybe the US, due to the attractivity that they have, we're not sure of that, but since the focus in this last GEAB was Europe, definitely we've lost. We know that there are brains, there's been a brain drain that has been going on still, and this brain drain is also due to the fact that even our startups have been bought by the Americans in particular, by the Chinese not so much. It's still very much the Americans who buy our brains, our production, our intellectual productions. So we end up with not much, in fact. And I don't know, we talked about the NVIDIA ARM deal, which has been blocked by the EU, where it's one last flagship of tech industry. They do microprocessors. I don't know exactly what they do, but they are on tech parts. It's a British company, and it's apparently one of the very few big global companies, and it was about to be bought by a US company, and it was blocked because we were going to be left with nothing. So the EU is both at a time when it has and that's really what has happened in the last few years, has really identified the challenges for itself, probably, we think properly. The problem is that we have to move from forward based on decades lost, of at least 2-3 decades lost. So there's going to be a gap. That's something also that we see very much at play, is a gap. So in 5-10 years, okay, plans are there, strategies are there, etc., but there's this gap between today, which is, we are in a dramatic, of course, state, and we have to go another 4-5 years at least. For the one example also that we quote is that bothers us a lot, is that how much we observe that the ECB, among others, have been discussing this digital currency. That is one key aspect of the modernization of our societies. The Chinese are already testing their digital currency. It's about fluidity of the monetary system. It's about accessing further and create we have another 4 years to go before, that's what is written everywhere, 3-4 years to go just for that. And with, indeed, as you were saying, these problems of components, material components that we need for this digitalization of society. So if we are blocked due to the gap crisis, it could even be more than 4 or 5 years to wait. And so that's a huge crisis for Europe, probably.
You also describe, and what I think is an interesting way of looking at it, is that there is some sort of the two systems that Europe could evolve into is on one hand the agility of an individual country, where the country can have the perhaps illusion of moving faster, so the whole vaccine crisis in some countries, and the slowness of how vaccines are coming to us. It's also on the other side, if you match it with some sort of global coherence or cooperation structure that Europe is, so the agility versus the power block. So I find that a very interesting image on how could Europe evolve in order to sort of combine the two, because it is also about what you described with the digital currencies. There's a very slow process of change, and how to change the system in order to be more agile in decision making.
Yeah, that's the highlight of the last GEAB. It's indeed we've identified this problem that the EU has, and which has been particularly revealed by the vaccination campaign, the failures of the vaccination campaign. You had on one side this EU that wanted to have a coordinated approach that had to deal with 500 million people or 450 million people getting at the same moment. It was, it was a question of an existential question for the EU to actually be capable of providing vaccines for everyone more or less at the same moment all over the EU. But therefore, the complexity was a lot higher than when you deal for a small country, especially small countries, but even big countries. At least you use your single-headed governance system to and that's how we are in a failure in the EU. We have failed, not completely failed, but we have this échec in the vaccination campaign, which highlighted how much we are a slow player. The EU is a slow player, and that's why you have these states underneath which are pushing for getting back their sovereignty to be fast again, fast in a world where you have UK now is a fast player, maybe weaker but faster, more agile, and the US, even the big players, as I was saying. I mean, even the US, okay, they have big countries to carry behind, but they have a simple decision-making system. So we have these big and small fast players, but very competitive. So, which is exactly what the EU tries to avoid, because in a competitive world where everyone wants to be first, you end up in wars. You know the tensions that. So the EU is a project of peace, of indeed not going for the competition, going for the co-petition in the best case scenario, which is the new word used a lot. For a few years we use this word co-petition, but co-petition is possible when you deal with a closed somehow system, and that's where we sort of realize today that the project of the EU only makes sense when you have a global governance which also coordinates the fast players. You can be fast if you are coordinated, but the EU level of coordination is not enough, because it is capable of organizing agility within itself, but compared to the outside world, there are faster players, and it's only at the global level that you need to coordinate that. And so we say in this last GEAB that the EU now should really head for this contribution. It is a very relevant player to contribute to the organization of the next global governance system. It has an experience, it has a legitimacy, a historical legitimacy, so that's where it should really go full speed, not waiting. I don't know how the problem is. It seems that it has to be authorized, but probably the EU could manage to be more proactive and in this direction, and contribute to this so needed global reinvention of the global governance. And once the global level is reorganized, the EU will make sense again and in an organized world.
So it's also one of the anticipation that you say if Europe is not able to play this game well, that in 2030 the disintegration of the EU will have been increased in different blocks that could actually be part of the system. But what is because I think it's an interesting notion that the EU on one hand has to manage itself, and on the other hand has to have the vision of this more global governance. And what would be interesting allies for Europe to look at?
The allies, there's no. Well, the EU itself has a huge, and a global scale. Europe is a very strong player. We have the G20, for instance, is very European, because there's the EU is one of the members of the 20, plus there's 3 or 4 countries. So we on the G20 we have at least 4 or 5 players out of the 20. So we have some 20-25% of the G20, and the US just has one. So interesting.
Yeah, interesting.
So we have a power on the global scale, which we don't use very well because we disagree on everything, basically. That and in particular on our positioning with in this with regards to keep to the rest of the world, to other big players like Russia, China, US in particular, and also about the vision. And there's no maybe having a common vision, regardless of who with. I think the ally question is something very touchy, and in fact we shouldn't. We shouldn't focus on that very much, and on the contrary, think about what we Europeans want, is in our interest in this regard, and move in that direction with whoever is ready to move in that direction, and without consideration of alliances of any sort, because we've seen that our allies are not necessarily our best friends or working in our best interests. So we think that the next G20 taking place in Italy at the end of the year is a key moment where we hope that the EU is going to show some capacity to bring something interesting, something new, something energetic, something and what we advise very much, it's not the first time that we advise that there are issues, there is something very interesting and new and novel emerging that has emerged already in the Eastern Mediterranean, with the repositioning of Israel in the Middle East, with the discovery of these gas reserves, and the challenges between Greece, Turkey, Israel, Libya, etc. So we have reasons for war there, reasons for tensions, reason for peace, therefore for peace building, and that definitely it's a place where between Europe and this new Middle East that we've observed very much, that is not very well covered by the media today, but that is very present in our pages, how much the Middle East has transformed completely. So we have a new Europe. Everything is a bit new, but the Europe has changed a lot in the past few years. A completely new Middle East, and we have in between we have this Eastern Mediterranean where there are challenges, and so we think that a conference there of discussing our futures, our common futures around this, of course, very ancient Mare Nostrum, this Mediterranean cradle of our civilizations. I would say that they are connected, our civilizations. I mean, and it's the Middle East, of course, and Europe have an historical connection that could be revived, and which could be in the hands of the Europeans to propose.
Yeah, it's indeed.
And in this case, what it would be interesting to have observers outside powers like China, like Russia, and like the US, but that it would be centered on our own interests for the future.
Yeah, I think there's some quite interesting metaphors in the GEAB as well. You talk about the Sleeping Beauty, Europe that has to wake again, and you talk about what I liked as well is this, like you said, slaloming between iceberg with a super tanker, and then the last week's news on this super tanker in the middle of the Suez was a very interesting and powerful image as well. Also on how trade is organized.
Yes.
Very,
yeah, that's true. It's I didn't make the parallel between this image that we used and indeed the super tanker that blocked. So you see the power of anticipation.
Yeah, it's incredible.
Slaloming between icebergs. That's a very easy image of what we mean when we say that the EU is and that's something we highlight also in this issue, is the EU is a slow is a super tanker. It's a heavy boat. It's a very heavy boat. It is slower than fast boats, but at the same time, it is probably, that's something we sort of identified, it's probably going too fast for its size. No. So the competition is compelling the EU to go faster and faster, even if it's going not fast enough, but too fast for its size and its agility. And so that's an image that's
that's interesting.
That outlines the dangers.
And also, one other aspect that is mentioned in this GEAB, what I really find interesting is how the different institutions within Europe, what do they need, how do they develop? So you talk about the European Parliament and the importance of the oxygen of the citizens, and that really the European Parliament should be at the core and at the heart of transforming European democracy with the use of technology and that sort of developments that are really very apparent, but are not being really steered by the European Parliament itself, and that should be the sort of the core of where the democracy is developed. And also you talked about the Commission and the interesting two-sidedness of reports that we found over the last month in our research. Can you tell a bit about the Commission and these two sort of the ideological
revolution?
Yeah, what you see there.
Well, yeah, I'm not going to enter into the detail because in fact it's a synthesis of various reports published in the past year, I would say by the Commission, by the European Commission, which are about the vision, which altogether define the vision. It is very much based on what Ursula von der Leyen called for recently about resilience. The resilience is really
resilience. I hear it all over the place.
Yes. But as an anticipator, I sometimes fear that resilience is the kind of strategy you build when you don't want to know about the future and you just think I can't say anything about the future, so I just make myself very resilient, whatever happens, which we can say that we disagree with the principle. It is important to be resilient, but it shouldn't be at the disadvantage of looking into the future, really at what are the challenges ahead, etc. So I hope the resilience is not about putting your head in the sand and being resilient. So that's one thing. But apart from that, we've highlighted for past few months, and these reports and the interview that we have made of this European Commission civil servants show how much Europe has really thought. The EU has really been strategizing a vision of the future, which is about the Green Deal, which is about the digitalization, modernization, resilience, and now there is this notion of strategic autonomy, which is which questions a lot the former EU, which was more about being an actor of the globalized economy, etc. And so, of course, they call it strategic open strategic economy. So they remain an actor open to the world. The idea is not to shut ourselves, indeed, among Europeans, but nevertheless to prioritize. There is something of a Europe first in strategic autonomy, which makes sense, which responds probably to what they understood from the public opinion in Europe, and from the circumstances of crisis, the crisis that we have. So it all makes sense, but it is an ideological revolution. It does question some principles, some very basic principles, which we define, and so it's relevant. But we also sort of noticed, including the interview how difficult this ideological revolution will be to achieve it. And whether so it's not, are they going to be successful in implementing this vision, or is it going to be blocked by this there is something again of what we were discussing at the beginning of our conversation about this dream of there are some elements of dream in the vision. We must distinguish vision and dream. And is this vision, which probably comes from before the COVID, with the COVID, is it still completely relevant? Is it feasible? Are we not going to have such big economic shocks and constraints that that we are going to have to go back to basic principles of functioning, and voilà, as we were saying, you don't invent your autonomy so easily. I mean, we still depend completely on semiconductors from China, containers from all over the world, etc. So voilà, how is it going to be achieved? Alors, here, so we also think that's the strong message we send is if there is an ideological revolution, it must go along a structural revolution, that the EU must change in order to be capable of implementing this kind of strategy. It must change deep down, and that's where it comes to what you were saying in the first to begin with. It's the parliament, the democracy, the citizens. We need, in order to change structurally, the EU needs to be able to reform the treaties. To reform the treaties, it has to go through referendums. And voilà, since 2005, the whole system is very afraid of going through referendums because they fear to lose them and to waste a lot of energy and to signal how much the public opinions could be opposed to the European level, to the political levels, etc. in general. So they don't go for it. They are afraid to go for it. And it's probably that today the big challenge is to manage, and that's probably one of the objectives, it's maybe the only one that is relevant, of the Conference on the Future of Europe, which is about bringing citizens into a discussion on the future of Europe, and hopefully with a view to embark the citizens into this need for change and reform, and of reforming the treaties and reinventing the EU. But voilà, that's where indeed we have our hesitations. Voilà, it's a project. The Conference on the Future of Europe is a project that was proposed. We need to completely confirm that, but by the time I'm pretty sure that it's the European Commission. In fact, it's even France, I think, that proposed it, but through the European Commission. And voilà, finally, the Parliament, of course, had to be a partner of that. There's been a big discussion about who would, from the Parliament, would run the show, and so they wasted time. But voilà, in fact, we think that it's the kind of project should have been invented by the Parliament directly if we had a Parliament that was connected to the challenges and to the people. That's what they're supposed to do, to be connected to the challenges and to the people, and therefore, voilà, create circumstances for these reforms, etc. So that's where we are a bit pessimistic. Individually, there are lots of very beautiful people in the European Parliament, but collectively, it is a parliament that is only representative of the national interests structurally, because there is no such thing yet as transnational trans-European political parties being represented there. There is no such thing as European citizenship being represented in the European Parliament, de facto, whatever they say. Maybe they think they are, because of their connections in the European Parliament, they think that they are European. De facto, they are serving national interests, full stop. That's what their mission is about. So we question very much the capacity of this European Parliament to actually be capable of embarking properly, and the structural reform that we have in mind would very much concern the European Parliament, and voilà. So these are the questions we.
But already that there is the idea of a conference on the future, and that citizens will be given a role in defining some part of the contents of new treaties, of new developments. Takes already a long time that we are in this space debating the need for this sort of change, and hopefully this will bring about some to involve these citizens' view on the table. And
it's a very good. Sorry, it's a very good initiative, and it's we need to see the tool, and it will be launched on the 9th of May. This year, and they have a multilingual platform, which reminds us, of course, it's not. Of course they have it, but so it will be interesting to see how powerful this. So everybody can discuss with everybody in their own language. That's what we've done. You remember, Véronique, in 2005 with Europeans, we created that tool at the time, 16 years ago. So finally, they are creating it at the European level, and voilà, there is a very good potential, and we hope the citizens will get there. It's a very open and very uncoordinated. So it's not coordinated, and at first we thought maybe it could be a flaw, but no, it's also it's an agora. The European Commission has created an agora of in the middle of the European city, you know, in the sense, in the Greek sense of all this. So the agora's there, and now you fill it in or you don't. But it's not, and you have the place now to make your voice heard, to gather people around you, and somehow we think that this is exactly the kind of place that is needed to see trans-European political parties finally emerge for the European election of 2024 to finally look like a European election.
Well, I'm quite hopeful actually that in the Dutch parliament we had Volt being elected. So they started on the European level and now also have their representatives on national levels, and they are growing and building. So I'm quite hopeful. This is for me a sign that the European parties, well, it's more than only the idea. It's already it's becoming reality, and I know we've been trying to go into this direction since '89, the elections that we were part of. So I think it's hopeful, and we'll see how this develops. Well, thank you, Marie-Hélène. This was a very interesting conversation, and I really hope that everybody reads the GEAB. There's much more information in it. There is also a very interesting article on the Vatican with quite an ominous title, Vatican 2023 Transcending the Apocalypse. So if you want to know where that is all about, just read the GEAB. And we have a very good article on the price developments of silver, which also tackles a lot of geopolitical and industry developments, which is actually influencing this price. So I think it's an interesting. I've been reading it with a lot of pleasure and interest. And then, of course, like all weeks, we have the investment trends and recommendations. Can you tell a little bit about next month GEAB?
Yes, the next GEAB in February we were focused on the US scene from a European perspective. This month was the EU seen from a European perspective, and next month we would like to address China, to look at China and also update update the information about how China is evolving in the face of the huge tensions that are around it. So opportunities, and China has been is at the hub of huge opportunities. The crisis is playing has projected China as a superpower even more, but at the same time it has strengthened the tension around it, and we want to dig into how much China is suffering or not from these tensions, and what could be the perspective in terms, especially from our point of view as Europeans. Is it sustainable to divorce from China gradually, and voila, etc. With all the questions.
Interesting. Well, I'm sure everybody is looking forward to that GEAB, and thank you very much again for this conversation, and to the audience. Hope to see you again in next time.
Yes, thank you again, Véronique, for the
interesting
conversation, and for everyone for listening. Bye bye. See you next month.